Hey, Carly.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Good. Good. Do you hear me okay?
Good. I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I can. Your
Great.
video is currently not moving. It's just a picture.
Oh, hold on a second.
We must be visible though to the audience because Ed just said we look good.
Good. All right. Thanks, Ed. Looks like we'll maybe give
Yeah,
it
we're
another
both
minute
good
or
too.
two to let
Oh, that's right.
we'll let-
Ed's got access to the background here, so he's on with us.
give it another minute or two for people to finish joining on.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think. What do you
All
think?
right.
Ready to go?
Sure. Start. Let's get it going. There we go. All right. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm Carly Furman, NIAX LLC CEO, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Jeff Beach, Vice President of Merchant Sales and Solutions with Visa. And we're very excited today to be discussing the payment landscape future and how that's going to impact our unattended retailers. You know, I think it kind of goes without saying that 2020 has been an unprecedented and challenging time from a health, from a safety, political uncertainty, economic perspective, you know, kind of the whole gamut. But we strongly believe that our industry of unattended retail, and particularly coupled with cashless payment acceptance, is really 100% aligned with how our consumers want to purchase now and going forward. So NIAX's platform and hardware securely and safely supports your customers' buying preferences and eases the burden and cost of running our operators' operations. So as a global payment solution provider, the NIAX platform includes our state-of-the-art devices that are developed in-house, and we have over 100 developers on staff, as well as includes our cashless payment platform, allowing all forms of payment to be accepted, you know, EMV contact, contactless, NFC mobile payments, even alternative payment technologies, as well as the NIAX platform includes the comprehensive management and AP suite so that our operators can have full visibility to their machines, the health of their machines if they're online, as well as how they're getting that data. And of course, the platform includes our engagement and marketing platform to allow remote refunds, as well as discount and loyalty campaigns, things that really can drive repeat sales and increase loyalty and engagement. And it looks like we have a little delay in our slides, so kind of bear with me. Going to the next slide. So kind of as we're waiting for the next slide to click over, you know, really the kind of the two pillars that we see together with Visa and NIAX offering our operators is the ability to increase our sales primarily through accepting cashless payments. We do see that generally speaking, once cashless acceptance is on a machine, we see roughly a 30% growth in revenue. When you couple that with the operational reduction of sometimes as much as 20% by managing machines, managing the inventory in the machines, you know, the entire gamut of the remote monitoring, that kind of push pill really drives the bottom line for our operators. So before I hand it over to you, Jeff, to talk about Visa and then get in actually to the meat of our discussion, just like to summarize that, you know, we do understand, it's been, to say a crazy time of 2020 is a bit of an understatement, but we do strongly feel that the NIAX platform provides full end-to-end security for our customers, as well as world-class support and service, specifically tailored for unattended environments, and providing the security and safety that our operators and your end consumers need to really be able to drive an increase in revenue. So, Jeff, I'll kind of go over to the next slide, and why don't you tell me a little bit about Visa?
Sure, great. Thank you. As Carly mentioned, I'm Jeff Beach with Vice President in the Emerging Merchant Group with Visa, focusing on small ticket transactions. So especially we're talking about unattended today, but my team and I also focus on transit. We also focus on lottery and gaming, parking. So really anything with a smaller ticket size. There's a fact sheet for Visa. One thing that we'll talk about today, so Visa is not just a card company. It's also not just a payments company. It's also a technology company. I think we'll go through some of those differences today, but just real quick about me. So I've been with Visa now for just over 16 years and have focused on growing emerging payments. So really focusing on areas that don't accept Visa and expanding acceptance in those areas. So that's a great fit for what we're talking about today. And then I've been mostly on the merchant side of the house, and mostly about acceptance. But before joining Visa, I was in the financial industry on the issuing side of the house. So I have a little bit of background as well on both sides of that transaction.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So let me click over to our, let's see. Eliran, you might need to advance the slides for us. It looks like, there we go. All right. So let's get into kind of what we were planning on discussing today, Jeff. So, from your perspective and Visa's perspective, what do you feel is really starting to drive the increase in the use of cashless?
Yeah, great. So it's a good question to start with for this webinar today. So I think the first reason, and it fits not only in this industry, but others as well, is that they found that card acceptance is a great investment. So there was actually surveys done this year, even during the time of COVID, that found that operators that had moved to cashless are finding it's a great investment. There's a few reasons for that. So those operators are finding that monthly sales are going to jump. I think logically it fits that consumers don't carry cash like they used to. So if you think about the times that you've walked up to an unattended vending machine and you don't have the cash that you need to make a purchase, almost everybody today has a card in their wallet, or they've got a phone that has payment capabilities. So, and not only are they willing to use that instead of cash, but also they're willing to spend more. So we see that not only, that goes back to the days of when we put terminals in grocery stores. So that we found that in our very first surveys years ago, and that continues now with unattended.
100%.
Yep. It's it's getting a little bit easier as well to add card acceptance. The terminals themselves are becoming easier to add. Sometimes they're just an add-on piece of equipment. With contactless, you're not looking to put in terminals that actually are going inside the machine. Sometimes they can be attached to the machine, so that makes it a little bit easier. We are talking about COVID today a little bit, so I think we've seen as well, there's really a greater interest now in moving to cashless, as cash is, I'll use the word that's being used in the media, as cash is starting to be perceived as dirty, and that consumers don't really want to handle it. So they don't want to dig in their wallet, they don't want to handle money. So they're looking for other options.
100%. And advance on. So, and I think that kind of, transitions right to our next discussion point, which is, actually seeing an increase in cashless acceptance in the unattended business. To your point, I do think, that cashless has become a preferred payment method for traditional retail. And, we did see pre-COVID a acceleration anyways of cashless acceptance with unattended retail. I think, in line with COVID and the contactless and a frictionless payment experience, personally, we are seeing a huge acceleration of cashless with unattended. What are you kind of seeing from your side and from Visa's side?
Yeah, I would totally agree. And as you know, we work together to help close those gaps. My team and I, and so includes Ed Budd, which likely a lot of folks on the webinar today know. He's a 20-year veteran in this industry, came from Coca-Cola. He knows the business. And so, Ed and I, we look for opportunities to close acceptance gaps. Where do we need to get cashless acceptance? And so, we've been working with a number of our partners for the last few years to close that. I'd say in the last couple of years, we've added over 1 million in this segment alone, 1 million new acceptance points for cashless. So that, not only includes maybe food and beverage, but also micro markets, which are taking off, but also looking at laundry and parking and really a newer one in this space, but electric vehicle charging.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely, as you know, partner together a lot with our EV charging customers, like you said, in car wash, laundry, a lot of the smart machines too. It's great to get to see that kind of acceleration in the unattended retail space, for things that are beyond kind of the traditional food and beverage, what I think, is what people thought of. So what kind of innovations can we all expect from Visa being a cutting edge fintech global provider, in the coming months and years?
Yeah, and I mentioned this in the introduction. So Visa is not just a card company, and they're not just a payments company, but they're an innovation company. So Visa is always looking for ways to make it a little bit easier for companies to do business. We are looking at, we're a consumer to business technology company. We're a B2B technology company. We've introduced some new services over the last couple of years, like Visa Direct, which allows our network to be used for payments to other businesses, where, for an example, maybe a company like Nayax can pay some of their clients via our network versus sending a check or maybe even using ACH. So, but also, looking at ways to make chargebacks easier and, reducing chargebacks and providing consulting services. I mentioned small businesses. Visa recently launched a small business hub, realizing that many of our users on all sides of the business are small businesses. And so this small business hub has resources and provides resources for really running a business from all aspects, from financial side, but also from marketing, et cetera. That can be found on our website, and we can provide some additional information on that. Pretty excited what we can provide in the small business hub. And then from an innovation standpoint, you're going to hear more in the future as well about innovations like Tap to Phone, where it's really a technology turning a smartphone into a payment acceptance device. So there's more coming in this area. I think we've done a lot, and we've made significant progress in moving this segment to cashless, but there is a lot more to do, and we're continuing to look for new innovations.
Awesome, thank you. So let's get into a little bit of a discussion on contactless. I think it's quite safe to say that contactless acceptance on both Visa and Nayax, understand this being global companies, is widely accepted globally. I think in the U.S., NFC contactless has been accepted more and more over the past few years, but recently we're really starting to see a surge in contactless via contact credit card or contactless credit cards, tapping cards. So can you talk a little bit about contactless and why, from Visa's perspective, it's a preferred payment method?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have a few questions today in this presentation about contactless, so I'll not go into everything right here because I know we're coming to more. But a few reasons why contactless is better is really the convenience factor and how easy it is to use, and it's simply tap to pay, and you're out the door. Outside of the U.S., it's pretty common already. So, 3 out of the 4 transactions are completed using a contactless card outside of the U.S. already. So it's really taken off outside. The U.S. has been behind the curve. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, but as we'll talk here in a little bit, the U.S. has been making great strides to catch up. And this year in particular, I think contactless has been become much more to the forefront, and not only in the media but in consumers' minds, as it's easy way to pay and you're not touching anything. Contactless does reduce cash handling, improves some operational efficiency. The mobile capabilities part of it, which when contactless first launched many years ago, the mobile part wasn't there. So it was just cards. And now that you can use your phone or another device like a watch to make a payment, and it's readily available, and everybody carries their phones at all time. It's really made a big change in that area. And I think what we've also seen is that contactless devices, at least in the unattended segment, they're better weather resistant. There's no internal piece that you've got to insert a card. Instead, it's just tap to pay. And so we found that the devices do a little bit better when, a lot of these unattended terminals are outside.
It's an interesting point, especially from the durability when we think of some of our unattended customers, like in the EV space, in the car wash space, having that, that capability for sure. And I know that, personally, we're seeing a lot more contactless capable cards also in consumers' hands, which I'm sure is helping the deployment as well. So tell us a little bit about, more about how you're seeing contactless being accepted in the unattended industry specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So the small ticket segments that I mentioned before, and also one area that was small tickets that I haven't mentioned, but quick service restaurants. Those have been some of the strongest areas of adoptions in tap to pay. The food and beverage vending have multiple providers that are seeing 20% of transactions already completed with a contactless card, or either that or using some sort of mobile capability to do so. So we've already seen good acceptance in that area, and consumers are finding that they like to use it already. So unlike I think in a lot of the other markets where you mentioned the issuers in the U.S., typically there's it kind of goes along the same time. You've got merchants putting contactless acceptance in market. At the same time, you've got issuers issuing cards in market, and they sort of move along together. But in the U.S., we're around 70–80% of merchants today already can accept contactless cards. So every time an issuer sends a card to a consumer to use, they pretty much can go use that card in a lot of places they visit on a daily basis. So it's been a little bit different. So we're finding that the growth in the U.S. is really taking off because the acceptance side is ready to go. It's just a matter of getting cards in hands. But 9 out of the top of the 10 issuers now are issuing contactless cards. So we think that the U.S. is going to quickly catch up to the rest of the world.
Great. So, I think this is where there's some confusion, especially when it comes to our operators of unattended machines. So I would love for you, as the contactless expert, to, give some clarity to the difference between what contactless magstripe means and contactless EMV.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think I'll try to keep it fairly simple based on the actual cards themselves. So we'll picture, and I should have provided a picture of a card today just for the demonstration. But so MSD, which stands for the magstripe data, is simply that. So as you're probably familiar, cards have had mag stripes for a long time, and at times hackers have figured out how to get access to some of that data. So we've moved to EMV, which stands for the Euro MasterCard Visa standard, which is a chip. And what we found is that chip is much better at protecting data than the magstripe data. So if you think about that from just the card itself, that's how the cards work today. So most cards, I could probably say all cards, I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess all cards have chips on them now that have this standard, have this protection. Difficult for hackers to get access to that information. And all we've done is put that in the contactless chip now. So if you think about the same data of EMV, that is now on contactless chip. Now, when contactless cards first launched, there were still quite a bit of cards in market that had the mag stripes, and then merchants that were only accepting mag stripes. And so what we did was allowed some of the older contactless chips to operate with the old standard. However, that is, we're moving away from that and moving to the new standard, which will give some greater protection.
Got it. So is it safe to say that contactless mag swipe is using the static information, where contactless EMV is using the dynamic chip in the card?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's going to give us some greater protections there. I know in our next slides, next couple of slides, we're talking a little bit about that. You know, the operators, it's going to give them a little bit better payment security, some better interoperability. You know, it's going to be giving them a greater superior customer experience as well. You know, those are all the things that we're looking for as we move to this standard and try to remove those old types of transactions from the network.
Right. I know, and to your point, we are going to be jumping onto another slide. Oops, echo. We'll be jumping onto another slide here to talk about that. But you know, the security, I think, aspect of contactless EMV or contact EMV versus mag swipe from a fraud perspective, you know, is pretty impactful for operators and their end consumers. So when will this be? So I think we kind of touched on this slide, that what do these changes mean to operators? Maybe you could elaborate a little bit further. What does that mean to our operators? And then looks like someone's pausing back and forth.
That slide doesn't want
to and then the timeline. We can kind of go with those questions, Devin and Aid, together.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that one was coming. So yeah, they, you know, it's a great comment. Ed, who's on my team, made is that, you know, if you've not updated, then really you're late. So the rules for moving from MSD to EMV were put in place back in April of 2019. So that's when the technology was supposed to be moved. Now it takes time, and you know, realizing that not every industry moves along at the same pace. Visa's been accommodating to try to help various merchants move to EMV contactless chip functionality and remove the legacy MSD contactless technology. So that's going to be retired. So the original day was in April, and due to you know, some industries not quite there yet, you know, we continue to support the legacy technology, but it will be ending. You know, I would say that if there's anybody on here that needs to discuss, that you reach out to us to discuss. And you know, one of the things that we've got a great contactless team at Visa that has not only worked extremely hard to upgrade the technology, but also if you've been out, and I know a lot of us sometimes maybe we haven't been out as quite as frequently as we used to be, but if you've been out, you'll notice that the point of sale has started to be really updated to make it well known to consumers that walk up to any sort of terminal that contactless is in place. So that team has been working really hard to improve contactless all the way around. But if there is anyone on this webinar today that needs assistance with that, please reach out.
Yeah, and actually, you know, I did see, you know, we're going to be taking questions at the end of our discussion if we have time, and if not, we'll try to you know, address those afterwards. But I did see a question that came up in the panel, just specifically asking, does an operator have to worry about this specifically? They will not be able to take contactless transactions after the, you know, the cutoff that's coming soon of MSD contactless. So again, I can speak from the Nayax perspective that all Nayax devices have been EMV. We've been selling EMV certified devices since actually 2013, and those devices have been EMV enabled for contact and contactless with Visa in the field since 2017. So again, I can speak for, you know, on behalf of all of our Nayax customers, that they do not have to worry that when you know, MSD contactless is ceased, they're currently taking EMV contactless transactions with their Nayax devices now, and have been since, you know, 2017. So
yeah, and that's a great point. You know, if you don't upgrade the technology and everything is shut off, then and you're only able to handle the old transaction, there won't be any. So folks that walk up with EMV contactless cards, they won't work. So that's why it's important. I think, throughout the industry, we want to make sure that, on all sides of the business, it works smoothly. And I think consumers, when they walk up and they tap to pay, they want it to work, and they expect it to work, and they know how it works. And so we want to make sure that's a smooth process, and that it's not our intention to shut things off and make things not work. So
right.
Yeah.
And I think especially when we're talking about, the timing times out well also with, we know that the 3G is being sunset, and, being converted over to 4G technology. So I think, there's some uncertainty from operators' perspective on if they're going to still have that same reliability. But from NYIAX's perspective, again, there will be no ceasing of contactless transactions. In fact, we welcome and support this change from Visa, since we really feel like it's going to just be enhancing the security of the devices, as well as the 4G devices. All of our devices have been 4G for the past several years, so there should be no gaps in any of the acceptance, and in fact, just acceleration of the speed of transaction acceptance. So
good.
Thank you.
I think we answered I think we may have answered the next one in terms of timing.
Yeah. So do we have? Yeah. So the timing, is it? Do we have a concrete timing that we can provide to operators yet on when MSD contactless is going to be officially cut, or is it still a bit fluid?
Well, I was saving it for the next one, but that's maybe we'll jump to the next slide. And so talking about what industries may be impacted, because it plays a part in this. Even though, as I mentioned before, if you haven't updated, you're late to the game. As I mentioned as well, though, there are segments that are still moving along, and so some of those are the AFD, gas stations are still doing some upgrades, and as such, there is a date that's now out there of April of 21 for them to finish. It is really expected that the MSD contactless will be retired at some point next year in early 2021. I don't have a specific date, and I even if I had one, I don't know that I'd give one based on some of the changes that we made this year due to COVID, and so there's been some moving around of different deadlines. But right now, the expectation is that MSD will be retired next year.
Got it. So anyone that does have a terminal on their unattended machine that is not certified for EMV will be impacted when this changeover happens. That's a correct assumption. Okay. That's good information. Go to our next. So where do you see really the demand from contactless coming from?
Yeah, it's we touched on this a little bit, and I'll say, I meant to say this earlier, but you may hear me talking about tap to pay and contactless sort of at the same time. So Visa, when we're talking about using contactless cards, we say tap to pay. So I apologize if I go back and forth a little bit on that, but so we've seen that tap to pay transactions have grown across the board in all segments, including grocery and pharmacy. They're growing over 100% a year in contactless transactions.
Wow.
I mean, we talked about a little bit earlier about the U.S. being behind the rest of the world, but it is growing very fast. So tap to pay usage in the U.S. year over year from just this past July was 150%. So, and that's includes the first several months that we've had to deal with COVID this year as well. I mentioned this stat earlier as well, that 9 out of the top 10 issuers in the U.S. are already issuing contactless cards, which has been big. I think the issuers have, they believe in the technology, they believe in the cards, they see that consumers want to use them, so they're issuing cards. Just about any consumer could call up right now and ask for a card, and they'd be able to get it. So 9 out of the 10 are doing it today. We also found through some of the surveys that we've completed recently that consumers are really quick to adopt this technology. They like it. We did a recent survey. I'll share some stats that we got from that survey. So 30% of consumers started using tap to pay during this COVID period. So maybe going back to late February, early March till now, the 44% saying they're using Tap to Pay more during COVID than they did in the past. Now, the interesting thing is, as you would imagine, like all companies today, we monitor social media and the various applications there. So we've seen an increase of over 2,000% of just the conversations around Tap to Pay and contactless during this period. So it is a realization. I think it goes back to one of the first points that we made, where consumers aren't as comfortable dealing in cash. And so because of that, they're looking for new ways to pay, and contactless fits that bill pretty well. So we found that this is one of the reasons that there's 9 out of 10 issuers issuing cards, is that 80% of consumers are motivated to apply for a contactless card. So they're looking for they would like one, and those not the same. It's not the same 80%, but 80% of consumers in that survey, they're concerned about touching readers, as you would imagine. So they don't really want to put their hands on it. And so that's really all those factors combined. It's really helping to drive contactless adoption and usage in the U.S.
Yeah, it definitely kind of seems like it's everything coming together at once, from the ease, the security, the safety, and the availability of using contactless. So, all right, move on. So, how important do you think contactless is to consumers? I know you touched on this already by kind of monitoring just the subject matters that we're seeing, in feeds of contactless. But how important do you think it is to consumers, or is becoming to consumers?
Yeah, I think it's going to become the preferred way to pay worldwide. We already see that outside of the U.S. today, and it's continuing to grow. I mentioned that the growth that's happening out there. It's growing over 50% a year, and I think consumers are looking to go to more of a digital first type of commerce. No matter where they're buying. So we're seeing contactless growth happening across multiple industries, whether it's you're in a grocery store, even if restaurants, you're starting to see restaurants adopt technology where they're using handheld devices, so they can just come to your table and they can accept a contactless card in that way. The hardware stores are starting to do it. You're starting, some of your airlines, and maybe a lot of us haven't seen an airplane in a while, but you're starting to see airlines adopt that same sort of technology on board as well. So I think it's becoming more ingrained in the society. I guess we probably would see a lot more of news in this direction as well. But one of the things that happened late last year and into early this year is that the New York MTA launched their contactless to ride the MTA. And so at the end of this year, they're going to have every station enabled for contactless tap to pay to ride. And we saw there was really great demand for that early on, and consumers were very excited about it. And we've also found that translated well to other segments as consumers were riding, and then they like, oh, I use that to ride, and then I get off the ride and I can go to another place. I see a vending machine, I can use it there. I can go into a quick service restaurant. I can go to a drugstore, and so that is really contributing to the fact that the consumers are really adopting this technology.
Got it. So, I think it does kind of go in line with, how traditional retail, like you're saying, and kind of the consumer spending habits that become part of our day to day also then do translate over quite quickly then to unattended, especially with the accelerator of COVID and wanting to have a more touchless experience. So. So is contactless only an option? And I know that it has not been an option in the U.S. for some industries, or some verticals, I should say. So can you kind of elaborate on where that stands now and what we kind of foresee coming up from Visa's regulatory standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's still in our rules that it's not currently an option, but I'll say that in this industry, we are looking for to do some pilots. And so I'm sure that, you know, we've had some conversations with potentially some folks that are listening today. So we are interested in doing so. I think Visa wants to see the business case for doing it. I believe it. I think contactless only in an unattended environment makes total sense. I mentioned earlier that it's a lot easier to put this type of device on an unattended vending machine. I think our clients would be interested as well. You know, putting we don't really want to put a magstripe reader on. We talked about that and why we prefer to get away from that. But also at the same time, putting an internal chip reader may be difficult in an unattended environment. We have started to do some more contactless only acceptance in the U.S. The reason it's not just a, you know, snap your fingers, let's go do this, is we want to make sure that if somebody's carrying a card, that there are options and they can use that card. So if it's contactless only and the consumer maybe doesn't have a contactless card, then they can't use it. So then it becomes maybe a confusion issue. But I will say that in the transit example that I mentioned earlier, we've moved to a contactless only environment there. Now then nearby, you can buy, you can still get access to the system, but we do have contactless only acceptance when you're walking into the station through their terminals. So we are looking for some partners here. We believe, you know, this team believes that it is the right way to go. We've just got to build the business case for Visa and for our clients. And so if there's some interest there and we've not had the conversation, let's do so.
Yes, and definitely. And to our operators who are listening, please let us as in NIAX and your NIAX sales rep know if you are interested in pursuing a contactless only pilot. I know that, you know, I've spoken from both Ed and Cindy at Visa, as well as you, about looking for operators either in laundry with more, you know, space constraints on their machines, or in other verticals of unattended, who maybe would be interested in doing a pilot in conjunction with NIAX's Onyx contactless only device in the U.S. and Visa. So let us know if that's something that you're interested in for anyone who is listening. So I guess, you know, is there anything else that you think operators should know who are listening and unattended as they're trying to figure out ways to maximize their revenue and reduce their operational costs and really kind of have an eye to the future as, you know, retail is changing and consumer purchasing habits are changing?
Yeah, I think, and we've pursued this theme throughout the conversation today, is that, you know, contactless issuance is going to continue to grow and consumers are going to look to continue to adapt. So I would say that operators just need to be aware that this is happening, and they don't have a plan to look at this, and they should. You know, outside of that, you know, we haven't talked really and weren't planning to go into any detail, but you've got the mobile environment as well, which is continuing to expand. You know, Apple Pay, Google Pay, you know, they're continuing to see lots of increases in contactless payments as well. So they're helping to drive the consumer adoption. You know, I would say that operators need to be aware of what it would take to upgrade devices and what are the options to do that, because I think, you know, as we come out of COVID, hopefully, and things return to some normal environments and travel returns, that, you know, consumers are going to be looking at this. And so I think now is a good time to be looking to say, okay, what do I have to do? Is it going to be difficult? You know, can I upgrade firmware? You know, do I need to add a device? Is contactless only going to work for me? Those are the things that I think now would be a good time to be addressing before the volume returns to where it was perhaps at the end of last year.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, again, when we're also looking at the 3G networks being converted to 4G, it really is a great time to look at upgrading your entire payment technology platform, not just the communication piece, or not just looking to be able to accept all payment options, but the entire full platform to have maximum options for consumers.
Yep.
So credit card fraud. Yeah, so I think that's, kind of the last part I would love for you to touch on, credit card fraud specifically. I think again, when we're talking about EMV, there were some misnomers specifically, several years ago on why EMV was needed and important, especially for unattended, operators. So I'd love for you to talk about how that's important from a security standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our goal is to reduce fraud and reduce chargebacks and really reductions across the system. But that's not really key to our flow that we've built. And so, we have teams that monitor this all the time. So what I would say is that, as Visa's actively working to reduce card fraud and actively looking to reduce chargebacks as well on both sides. And so, a lot of that process has become automated. And so in the beginning of that process, I think, there may be we saw some increases in chargebacks, but we've been working really closely with our clients and then internal Visa folks as well to help reduce those numbers. And I continue to see those numbers go down. But I would also say that every client is a little bit different. And if you're seeing unusual card fraud and we haven't reached out directly to you already, then please reach out to us, because it is an area that we want to make sure that there are no issues. As everyone is aware that's probably listening to this today, there's not a lot of margin here. So having chargebacks, having card fraud is not good for the business case of card acceptance anyways. And that's how we started the meeting today. So what I would say is that if you've got an issue in this area that's causing problems and it's negatively affecting your business case, then please reach out to us. We'd like to work with you directly to figure out what's going on. We have folks that do nothing but this, and they've got great data to figure out, okay, how do you compare to your competitors? How do you, is it trending down? Is it trending in the right direction? Or if it's not, then, why is that? And we can probably figure that out for you.
Sure. And I think a lot of the operators who are attending today, are using Nayax as the merchant on record, so as a full payment solutions provider. So, I think chargebacks really haven't been maybe as relevant for our operators, because Nayax readers are EMV certified and enabled. So there is that liability shift, so that the chargebacks aren't even coming to Nayax. If there are any that are passed through, they're so, small and the threshold of materiality is so low and that we do absorb them in. But I do think that it's important, for our operators to realize that, to your point about mag swipe, contact with mag swipe, and just traditional swiping of credit cards versus EMV, the risk of actually having credit card fraud and having someone's credit card duplicated on a terminal is reduced so much when they're using an EMV certified and enabled reader with their EMV cards like a Nayax reader.
Exactly right. Yep, exactly right.
So I think that kind of got to, the end of the discussion points that we had. I don't know, is there any questions that kind of maybe came through earlier on that we want to hit on, or do we want to kind of maybe go through those at another time?
Yeah. So hi. Let me put my camera on so you will be able to see me as well. Hi everybody. You will see me in just a second in the camera, I hope, or not. My name is Eliran. I'm the training manager here in Nayax, and I answered some of your questions in the question pane, and we do have a question that keeps coming up. How does Monix work with Visa?
Sure. So that's a great question. So for those that are not familiar, Monix is Nayax's actually award-winning engagement app. So with Monix, you can actually load your Visa card, your payment card, and pay on any Nayax-enabled machine. Also, as an operator, then you can set up great loyalty and discount campaigns and have full visibility to what your operators are or what your end consumers are purchasing, when they're making those purchases, and have visibility to then tailor using Monix loyalty and discount campaigns that can then be paid for with a Visa card that's stored. So it's really in conjunction to use your Visa card stored in Monyx for an ease of payment experience, as well as to also increase repeat sales with the loyalty and engagement features that operators can customize in Nayax's backend system. So thank you for bringing that up, Elila.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you for this. I think that we have reached our 45 minutes limit. We do have a few more questions in the question pane, which I will answer each and every single one of you personally. But Carly, I would like to thank you for this.
And thank you, Jeff, for joining. I appreciate it. It was very knowledgeable, and like always, I appreciate the relationship with Visa and with you and Ed and Cindy and the whole team. So thank you again for your time and for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate the invite. Hopefully we're able to provide some information to the folks today. And, you know, I'm always available to, we can do this again. And, but anybody that had additional questions, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.